Good morning, dear learners. I am Mr. Winston Timothy, your regular geography teacher. Today, we are going to talk about settlements, its types, and the patterns. You are expected that by the end of this lesson, you should be able to define what a settlement is. You are also expected to discuss the various forms or patterns of settlement. So thank you for listening and pay attention. Be attentive so that by the end of this lesson, we are going to understand, achieve our objectives, and therefore answer the necessary questions. Thank you very much.
So, we are going to start with our introduction, where we are going to review our previous lesson. We have our objectives already in place, but I will still come back to the objectives. As far as our presentation is concerned, we are going to define a settlement, and after this definition, we are going to talk about types of settlement. And in our conclusion, we are going to have an evaluation and an assignment that I'm going to give you. That said, let us go directly to our previous lesson. In our previous lesson, we defined countrysides, and we said these are areas or extensive areas which are actually in an underdeveloped state. We also talk about rural landscape and features, and we said rural landscape refers to the features which are found in the rural areas, and we divided those features into physical and human features. We also talked about the agricultural landscape. This refers to an area of land in a rural area that is reserved for the cultivation of crops and the rearing of animals. And we actually said the main activity in the rural area is agriculture. That is why we are treating the agricultural landscape. We also looked at some of the rural dynamics, that is the recent changes that are taking place in the rural areas. So what are we expected to know by the end of this lesson? We are expected first to know what a settlement is, and secondly, the types of settlement. It also reminds us that you have to identify the various settlement patterns. So I expect that by the end of this lesson, you should tell me what you understand by a settlement, you should give me the types of settlement, and you should identify the various rural settlement patterns. Let's now look at what the definition of a settlement. A settlement can be defined as any form of human habitation, that is a place where people stay and carry out their activities and make a living, or simply a dwelling place for human beings where they stay and carry out their activities. What are the types of settlement? We can distinguish two types of settlements, which are rural settlements and urban settlements. I repeat, rural settlements and urban settlements. Rural settlements, they differ greatly from the urban settlements. And our focus today shall be on rural settlements. We shall look at the definition of rural settlement. We shall look at the types of rural settlement. And finally, we shall look at the patterns of rural settlements. Probably in our next class, we shall look at the forms of rural settlements. So, what is a rural settlement? Simply put it, these are settlements where most of the people are involved in primary activities such as fishing, such as farming, such as hunting, mining, forest exploitation, and many others. I repeat, settlements where most of the people are involved in primary activities such as fishing, farming, hunting, mining, forest exploitation. So you should know what primary activities are. Let's talk about the types of rural settlements. We have an isolated dwelling, which actually consists of a single house on a landscape. That's what we can talk about an isolated rural dwelling or isolated rural settlement, where we have a single house on a landscape. We also have hamlets. Hamlets are actually a type of rural settlement which consists of a group of huts of not more than 20. That's a group of huts of not more than 20 huts. Then the last type of rural settlement is a village. And we can define a village as a type of rural settlement which consists of a group of houses with at least 500 people. With at least 500 people. Now let's talk about the patterns of rural settlement. But before we talk about the pattern, I would like you to know the meaning of pattern. Patterns actually refers to the arrangement of settlements in a particular area. That is how buildings are arranged. Building can be arranged in a nucleated or a dispersed pattern. So we are expected to know what a nucleated settlement pattern is and what a dispersed settlement pattern is. So what is a nucleated pattern? In a nucleated pattern, the houses are close to each other. Houses are close to each other. So let's look at some of the factors that help in developing a nucleated pattern. Why will houses develop close to each other? If an area has a difficult relief, that means there are so many highlands in that place, the people will come together and therefore they will be nucleated. If there is scarcity of resources like fertile soils and land, people will concentrate in the limited areas where there is fertile soil and where there is land. If there is great insecurity or wars in the area, people would like to be close to each other, thereby encouraging a nucleated pattern. And we can have typical examples of nucleated patterns on the image below. Okay, can you see this? People are nucleated at a particular point. They are concentrated at a particular point. That is what we describe as a settlement pattern. The rest of the areas are empty, and you see the areas where people are actually concentrated. That's another nucleated settlement pattern. The rest of the areas are empty, and as you can see, they are concentrated at a particular area. Let's look at the dispersed pattern. In a dispersed pattern, houses are actually scattered all over. It develops in the following situations. That is what really helps it to develop. They are the contrary of nucleated pattern. Here we have areas of abundant land for farming. So if there is enough land for farming, people will not bother to concentrate in a particular area. Areas of great security and peace. So if there is peace and security in an area, people will not have to be concentrated since there is peace. Where water is available everywhere, people will actually not need to concentrate. They can disperse and go their different ways. So let's look at an example of a typical dispersed settlement on the image as such. Look at the houses. They are actually separated from each other. So they don't need to be in a particular place. They don't need to concentrate. As you can see, houses are separated from each other. That is a dispersed pattern. In our conclusion, dear learners, I expect that you can answer the following questions. I expect you to define a settlement. That's the first thing that you must do at the end of this lesson. Secondly, you must name the two types of settlement. Thirdly, you know what a rural settlement is all about. And then you can also state 4 primary activities common in rural settlements. And finally, you can distinguish between a nucleated and a dispersed settlement pattern. As our assignment, I expect you to tell us in our next class what is the form of a settlement. When we talk about the form, what is it? We are through with the pattern. Now I expect you to talk about the forms, and you state at least 3 forms of settlement. Thank you very much.
Dear learners, we have come to the end of our lesson, and I hope you understood. If you had difficulties, feel free to let me know. Submit your answers through the assignment forum, and make sure that you continue to stay safe against the pandemic by washing your hands regularly, sanitizing them, and most importantly, staying at home. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.